On my NAT box, I'm going to statically configure my network cards. The public interface for this room is 10, 13, 14. I'm going to do /1. You're going to put in your IP address for your station. My DNS server is going to be my internal DNS server. And you make sure that you use your station number. Don't go on autopilot. For the private network, 172.16.0.1. This is a gateway, so it doesn't get a gateway. Click OK, close, and our last interface on our NAT. 172.16.128.1. Again, our internal DNS server is going to be used on all of our interfaces except for our internal DNS server. And I'm going to change my computer name and then reboot. This is going to be my NAT. For security reasons, I don't want to call it NAT. The book, though, actually tells you to do that. I'm going to restart now. Guys, during this part, when I'm rebooting, invariably, if I keep pressing pause, I'm eventually going to turn it off one time and not turn it back on. I'll forget. So I don't try to pause it. During that time, when it's like rebooting, just fast forward it when you're watching it. And for the recording, I'm going to try to do everything on this box right here and now, including opening up ports and sending them into my eDNS and my web server. I'm going to boot up my third machine. Okay, I'm going to go in and add the routing remote access. Did something go wrong? Okay, I'll wait. key to working with virtual machines is when do you boot the other machines? Because if you boot too many at one time, it hits your disk, and that's the bottleneck. I'm going to install the network policy and access services for routing and remote access. After it's done installing, we need to configure it. Right-click Routing Remote Access, click Configure and enable Routing and Remote Access. This time we're going to do the VPN and NAT. It's asking which interface is connected to the internet. Where should we put our VPN clients? We're going to put them in a secure network, one we don't trust, the DMZ. We're going to segregate them from our network with our servers. We don't have a DHCP server in our network, so we're going to use Arrange. And this is our public network, and this is our DMZ network. I'm going to keep the first 10 address in reserve. So 1 through 9 rather, are going to be in reserve. Sorry. Gives us 32,000 addresses, which will approximately give us 16,000 connections. Click Next. Now it's asking, this is the wizard for NAT. Where do you want to share your internet access with? It doesn't matter which one we choose. We can add the other one once we get inside. Are we going to use a radius server? Yes. We want to pass authentication off of that box onto a box within our private network. We don't want the user accounts on any box that's facing the internet. The radius server will be 172.16.0.2. Our secret shared key will be security plus, all lowercase. What do we have to do next? Guys, it'll give you this error message. That's normal. It's just saying if you're relying on a DHCP server and that DHCP server is not in the subnet where you sent your clients, you need to set up a relay agent, because a DHCP request is a broadcast. Broadcasts cannot leave the subnet. So if your clients are broadcasting for an IP and there's no DHCP server to hear them, you need a relay agent to hear that request and pass it off to the DHCP server.
Didn't we say we do static?
Yes, so that message isn't pertinent to our network. So don't worry about it. Okay, what ports do we need to open up to our web server into our eDNS? Go drill down to IPv4, go to NAT. Do you need me to pause? We're going to right click and add a new interface. We'll add that other interface. It'll be a private interface, so it gets natted out. So I'm going to go highlight my public interface and go to properties. Then under the services and ports tab, I'm going to select web server, check that box, and it'll open up the box. Where do I want to send that to? So anytime we get any traffic for port 80 TCP on our public interface, our NAT router is going to send that in to our private machine, 172.16.128.3. The next one we're going to add, it's not here by default. The DNS, we don't have a default. They don't make a defined role. I'm going to click Add, DNS, make sure you choose UDP. And the IP of our DNS server is 172.16.128.2. And the outgoing port will be 53. If I wanted to, guys, I could listen on port 53 and then send it into port 80. But, I'm just going to keep the same. Click OK. Click OK. I'm going to pause it. The DC. No, we did that in the wizard, because in the wizard it asked if we were using radius, and if so, what was the IP?
Oh, yeah.
And then we put in that shared secret password.
Wait, that's the one we pointed to the DMZ?
No, with the first part of the wizard, we said we're going to put the clients in here, but this was our radius server.
Oh.
We had two radio buttons. No, I'll do authentication, or yes, I'm using a radius server.
Oh, so it's when we put in the address that.
Right. Yeah, if you're ahead of me, keep going. Yep, I'm recording. 172.16.0.2. 172.16.0.1 is my gateway. My DNS server, I'm going to point to my external. My external will point to my ISP. 172.16.128.2. When I promote this to a DC, it'll pull that IP out, make that a forwarder, and then put in the loop back in its place. What's going on, Brian? You're thinking of something?
Oh, no, I put the loop back in ahead of time.
In previous versions of Windows, you had to put in the loop back manually. I'm going to change the computer name, reboot. I'm going to sign in, install the Active Directory stuff, and promote it to a DC. Add a role. Click next, next, install. Do not click finish.
I'm still waiting.
Okay. This is the mistake that you skip every time. Let me pause this for a second. Right. This time I want to make sure I use a public namespace. Something.com. All my servers are going to be Windows Server 2008 R2 or higher. So I'm going to set the functionality level to 2008 R2. The DNS server I'm pointing to doesn't have DNS installed. So this step is going to fail, which we want to happen. We're going to click yes, and it will configure DNS on this machine. Click next. It's going through twice, I don't know why. Okay, it's failed, so now I'm clicking yes. Put in our recovery password in here. Okay, good. I'm at a good time. I'm going to record this. I got to go talk to that class next door. I'm going to sign in, fix my reverse, make sure I have all my records, pointer records and host records, and then I'm going to do my NPS server. Expand roles, expand DNS, expand our servers. We're going to drill down till we see reverse lookup zones. We want to right click and say new. It's going to be a primary zone integrated in Active Directory. Primary meaning it's a read-write copy. It's going to go to all DCs within all DNS servers within our domain. It's reverse for IPv4. And to include both my DMC subnet and my private subnet, I'm going to go back to my class full address. Click next, next, then finish. For this machine, I'm just going to do ipconfig, register, DNS to create a pointer record in that new zone we just created. Because dynamic DDNS, or dynamic DNS is kicking in. So if I go to my reverse now, highlight it, I should see a pointer record there. If you don't see it, try clicking refresh. So my DNS looks good. Now I'm going to add the NPS server. I have to install it, then configure it. I'm going to add a role. It's under Network Policy and Access Services. Henry, this is what you were thinking. And it says you can deploy NPS as a remote authentication dial-in user service. That's what we're going to be doing. Network Policy and Access Server. I can make this a proxy server too if I wanted to. The NPS can be a proxy server. Install. Hey. Hold on 1 second. NPS is installed. So now I'm going to configure it. I'm going to expand Network and Policy and Access Services, expand NPS. First thing I need to do is put on my Radius client, which is my VPN server. Click New. I'm just going to call it nat.farish.com. And then I'm going to type in 172.16.0.1. That's my nearest interface to my VPN server. Security Plus. Click OK. Now we need to add a policy. We're going to have two conditions to our policy. They have to be a member of a group, and they have to be connecting through a VPN protocol. So let's create that group. We should have done it earlier, I forgot. Let's expand Active Directory domain services. Expand Active Directory users and computers. Expand Ferris.com and highlight users. We're going to say new group. VPN users. This is where we screwed up last time. Drill down till you go to Active Directory domain services, Active Directory users and computers, bash.com, highlight users, right click, new group. Click OK. I'm going to right click, go to properties. Under members, I'm going to add administrator. Every time you want to allow a new user to connect through VPN, just add them to this group. Under the members tab, Brian. Click add and then administrator. No, members. That's what we made the mistake last time. We put it under member of. I was testing you guys. Only Met got it right. Okay. Click OK. Now I'm going to go back to my network policies. I'm going to create new. We're going to call this VPN connections. Whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Is it okay that I call it something website?
Yeah. Type of network access server, remote access server. I'm going to expand this window. Click next. Two conditions. They're a member of that group and they're part of that, they're using that protocol. Click add. The users group. That's one condition. Click add and then to add VPN users. Click OK. Click OK. That's one condition. Now the next condition we're going to add, I want you to click add and scroll all the way to the bottom and we're going to go to NAS type. NAS port type. And we're going to say it is a VPN server. The bottom is already checked from our first screen. Click OK. Then we don't